Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint Monster Podcast presented by Spendthrift Farm, home of six-time reigning champion sire Into Mischief. Vanessa, it's been too long, but the time away will end soon.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? Absence makes the heart grow stronger, because I haven't been back in America since Del Mar last year. And of course, now any regulars to you and the show will know that they know the drill here. Vanessa's incoming, all things Breeders' Cup. And I'm actually so pumped. Honestly, the Breeders' Cup, like, I know we're not here to talk about it, but the races this year, I just feel like across the board are a higher level than, I don't know, I feel like they have been previously in some areas anyway. And we're obviously going to talk about the juvenile sprinters, and yeah, rev for it.
Well, we'll get a lot more of your opinions about the other horses from your side of the world that are coming over. But for now, you're right, here to talk about the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And I think we have to start talking about True Love, who won the Cheveley Park, who led to my biggest, that race led to my biggest love last year in Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria decided to go longer. This one's going to go shorter. How good is True Love?
That is the big angle, though. You have hit the nail on the head there, because, yeah, True Love is definitely the big one in here for Aidan O'Brien. Obviously, he's going to have another runner as well, or it looks that way, in Brussels, and potentially as well, you've got Mission Central too. But at the moment, True Love's the big one. And obviously bringing in the Cheveley Park form, a filly, stepping down to the 5 furlongs. It's a different angle. It's punchy of Aidan. It's punchy with True Love, like it's punchy campaigning. And it tells us a couple of things, in my opinion. It tells us, one, that he really wants to win this race. And it tells us, two, that he thinks she is fast enough, which is the big question punters will have on their lips. Reading her form, she brings in the best European form lines. But the question everyone will be asking is she capable of running up to the numbers she's shown over further, down over 5, specifically at Del Mar? That's the big question, and that is the question I, at this stage, do not actually have the answer to, unfortunately.
Is she, just tell us a little bit, over here we can cheat with pace figures and things like that. Tell us, is she a forward type? Is she going to come from out of it? Is she going to get ran off her feet and have to try to pick up pieces late? What would you project her style would be in the race?
I think she'll be forward. I think she'll be prominent enough. I think they're going to ride her like she's speedy enough for the 5, as in they're not, if they're running her here, they are confident that the 5 furlongs is going to suit her. That, like I say, is a question mark for me. But the fact they're confident, I think they'll ride her confidently. I think they'll have her forward and in a prominent position. And look, like, she, as I mentioned, she brings in some of the best form lines in Europe for the juveniles, and she's a cut above, and she showed that last time. But the speed, the question mark, it is a question mark for her. But I think they'll be confident and they'll ride her forward, to answer your question. But it ties in nicely, if I can just move on to Havana Anna, because of course finished behind her in the Cheveley Park. But Havana Anna, trained by Donna O'Brien, good record over at the Breeders' Cup, good trainer specifically with the juveniles, speedy types as well, ticks all the right boxes. And yes, she was beaten by True Love, but that crucially was over the 6 furlongs. I think that when you look back at some of Havana Anna's Irish form over the 5 furlongs from the summer, she actually has the better toolkit for the 5 furlongs at Del Mar. And if you were to make me have a bet right now in this race, we'll rattle through a couple of the others. But for me personally, I think that Havana Anna is the most compatible horse we have coming over from Europe for this race and the challenges of the 5 furlongs at Del Mar.
So long story short, you'd rather own True Love, but you'd rather own Havana Anna for this spot based on the distance and her style.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Essentially, as a long-term prospect, of course, True Love's going to tick all the boxes. I think it's fascinating campaigning. I think it's punchy. I love to see it from Aidan, but I'm nervous for her. I am. Whereas the 5 furlongs and Havana Anna and the speed she's shown, some of her numbers as well, she's ticking more of the right boxes for me out of the Europeans. And that's just straight in there with basically the end answer, essentially. But we've got a few more to cover.
Yeah, and feel free to skip over the ones that don't get you excited. But Aspect Island, Mission Central, Brussels, who you touched on quickly. Any of those, if it's not the top 2, do any of those have a chance?
Well, look, I mean, fundamentally, the Europeans have this race worked out, right? I'm sorry to say it to a US racing audience, but we do. We've won it the last 3 years, and in fact, we've had a 1-2 in it the last 3 years as well. We've really got it sewn up. And you look at kind of winners such as Magnum Force and Mischief Magic, and they actually immediately kind of point in the direction of Military Code, obviously running in the same colours and for the same team as Mischief Magic, Team Godolphin, of course, but also the Magnum Force route is that like speedy 5-furlong route, and that is what Military Code brings into the race. Essentially, that's that like 5-furlong speed route. But Military Code like can't currently stack up against the best of the Europeans we're sending over here, and I'm not sure he's really got the tools for the challenge, really. I'd be nervous for him, even though I'm sure lots of punters will latch on to him because, of course, he's been running over the 5 and because of who he's trained by. And then you look at another race that's the sort of form is bringing in the Cornwallis. So that's the race that had Brussels and Aspect Island in it. But I suppose in many ways, actually, JK, the Cornwallis is one of Britain's closest races to this race, in the sense that it's a group race for juveniles over the 5 furlongs, and the second and third from the Cornwallis are coming over. But they would have to step forward, in my opinion. I think Brussels looks as though, I mean, some people are questioning his want to win. Just going to throw that out there. A little bit of a question mark about that for Brussels. And as for Aspect Island, to be honest with you, is that coming over as a bit of a travelling companion for Wimbledon Hawkeye for the James Owen yard? That would be a question mark there. So to summarise, they'd be a no, and that Cornwallis form is a no. Military Code is also a no. And then we should also just touch upon the other Aidan O'Brien runner in I keep calling it Military Central. It's Mission Central. Mission Central won on Champions Day over here, the new 2-year-old race for the Aidan O'Brien team. But that was over the 6 furlongs. Again, very different test. Quite a recent test as well. If they were to bring him over, I'd have concerns about him dropping to the 5. So when you go through all the Europeans, for me, you can write a good few of them off the list, as I have done there. And then you come down to True Love and Havana Anna and that Cheveley Park form. And Havana Anna would be the one that I think is best placed on what we've seen so far for the challengers of 5 furlongs at Delmar.
Zandon's poetry in motion. Big horse, but light on his feet. And he's always showed up and been consistent and been right there with some of the top horses in training. In the Bluegrass Stakes, he showed his determination and his raw ability.
It's over! Zandon wins the Toyota Bluegrass!
I feel breeders will be really blown away by what a striking, outstanding-looking horse he is.
Acacia, I feel like I haven't seen you in such a long time.
I know, it's been forever. You're all over the place. I'm all over the place. So hopefully we will get to reunite soon.
Yes, probably at the Breeders' Cup. Speaking of the Breeders' Cup, let's talk about this Juvenile Turf Sprint. I don't know how we're going to edit this. We either had Vanessa Ryle or we're going to have Vanessa Ryle. So whichever one it is, to talk about some of the European contingent. Let's focus on the North American horses, but I guess even more close to home for you. Let's start with Intricate Spirit. What are your feelings and thoughts about Intricate Spirit going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint?
He's exciting. He's done very little wrong in his career. He's 2 for 3. He just missed at Kentucky Downs, and the horse that beat him would come back and win a stake the following week at Kentucky Downs too. And then winning the Futurity last time, I think, was a really big deal for him because he has a lot of natural speed. He's a really high energy horse to be around in the mornings, and he was able to kind of take back a bit, settle, and come and catch that pace setter that day. So I thought it was a really big deal to show a little bit more of a dimension. I think the 5/8, given how quick he is not going to be a problem for him, and he's training with a lot of enthusiasm coming into it. So very excited.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Miguel's first Breeders' Cup with Miguel in charge. So that's exciting for you and the family. Let's talk a little bit about these other U.S. runners. We know your heart will be with Intricate Spirit. Cy-Fair, one that we were able to see up at Saratoga for George Weaver, who's been basically 100 for 126 in turf sprints over the last couple of years, it feels like. What were your impressions of Cy-Fair's performance at Saratoga and then subsequently the performance up in Canada?
I thought she was really impressive first time out. The fact that she just missed in the Bolton Landing, I actually caught up with George Weaver the other day in Saratoga, and he said it was actually disappointing that she didn't win that day, but then they took her up to Woodbine, and she did face the boys in the Algonquin, and I thought she was very impressive. Same thing, she's shown a little bit more of a dimension, because she was kind of in that first flight in her first couple of starts, and then last time in the Algonquin, going 5 furlongs against males, kind of similar conditions of what she's going to have to do in the Breeders' Cup, she was able to make a closing kick, and I thought she was impressive. She's very good. Like I said, clearly she's shown taking on the boys, no problem at all. And speaking to George, he said, they don't have a female equivalent of this race. It's kind of the same with the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. You see a lot more crossover with the fillies and mares going against the boys in those sprint races just because you don't have as much opportunity. So he said it's not something he's concerned about with her. I think she's super talented. He also sends out Royal Testament, who's a filly as well, but I think he seemed really high on Sci-Fair, and I think rightfully so because, like I said, she showed another dimension last time.
Acacia, you spent a lot of time looking at horse flesh, you and Maggie, throughout the summer and throughout the whole year. Is that a concern of yours, the physicality of a 2-year-old filly versus a 2-year-old colt at this point of their lives and their careers, or is it just kind of an interesting talking point?
At this stage, not so much. We talk about it a lot with 2-year-old fillies that debut maybe against the boys early in the season. You see Wesley Ward in particular do it a lot because often the 2-year-old fillies mature earlier physically and mentally, unlike humans sometimes, but at this stage, not so much. There's still so much development that's happening for all of them. You may see a difference. To be honest, looking at George Weaver's two, Royal Testament is more of a narrow kind of slider type of frame. She will stand out as the filly against the boys. Sci-Fair is like a tank, so I don't think you're actually going to even notice it, to be honest.
And then Schwarzenegger. I'm not sure if you were able to see him in the paddock, but is he well named?
He is. He's a big boy. I wasn't in the paddock for his first race, but I actually watched. I was on the early show, I think, that day, and I watched later half in the stands and watching that race. But it's funny because he was so hyped because I had interviewed Wesley early in the meet, and I said, we always look forward to your 2-year-olds. Can you give us some insight on maybe some that you're looking forward to? And the only horse he mentioned was Schwarzenegger. He's like, I can't wait to run him. He's so exciting. And then he scratched 3 times, I think, a couple times off turf. And then once was entered in stake, and he was entered at Monmouth, and then finally coming up. So it felt like he was kind of this elusive horse. And yeah, he got beat first time out. I do think that Atfield, who beat him, is pretty talented. He came back to win the Indian Summer. I think he's got some quirks that he has to work out. Maybe there's kind of raw talent there. He certainly could step forward. For me, he's going to have to figure out some of those things going into a race like the Breeders' Cup.
Well, I would imagine that you and Miguel probably look a little harder at the races you're involved in. Who at the dinner table have you guys talked about being a concern? If we haven't already named the horse, maybe an American or obviously a European that you guys think is the one you got to beat?
I think that there's always the questions with the Europeans. Aidan O'Brien potentially sending a couple who look pretty strong. I think, if anything, you do have a better opportunity to beat the European turf horses in a sprint race and 2-year-olds than you do in a race like the Breeders' Cup Turf. So, you've got Mission Central, who's already been in really good form for Aidan O'Brien, Charlie Appleby sending over potentially a military code, Havana Anna for Donica O'Brien. These horses look like they have a bit more experience already, and that's always a question. But like I said, I feel like 2-year-olds and turf sprinters is your best chance to best the heroes. So this is the opportunity that you just have to take.